Welcome back to the realm, and today I'm going to be covering part two of House Targaryen, the complete history, and why they were so dominant in Westeros for so long. So we left off with the Dance of Dragons. Next, we have the Conquest of Dorne. When Aegon III Targaryen died in 157 AC from consumption, he was succeeded by his eldest son Daeron I Targaryen, born to him by his second wife, Queen Daenerys Velaryon. Though Daeron was only 14 years of age, his uncle, Prince Viserys, decided not to insist on a regency and continued to serve his new hand as king. Daeron I had great ambition and wished to complete the conquest, which his ancestor Aegon I Targaryen had begun a century and a half before. During Aegon's conquest, Dorne had been the only kingdom to resist the Targaryen forces, and following the conclusion of the First Dornish War in 13 AC, a peace had been agreed upon by the Targaryens and the Martells, which had long lasted. Daeron I managed to convince his conciliars of his plans and managed to conquer Dorne within a year. In 258 AC, the Prince of Dorne and several other Dornish lords bent their knees at the submission of Sunspear. The hinterlands were pacified by 159 AC, and Daeron returned to King's Landing with 14 highborn Dornish hostages, leaving Lord Harlan Tyrell behind to keep the peace. However, Daeron's conquest did not last. The small folk rebelled, and though Lord Tyrell attempted to fight back, traveling from Holdfast to Holdfast, the rebels always struck back. After he was murdered in his bed, all of Dorne rose in open rebellion, and they managed to liberate themselves within a fortnight. Daeron returned to Dorne in 160 AC a year later, and when the Dornish requested to discuss peace terms the next year, they betrayed Daeron by attacking him beneath the peace banner. One of Daeron's Kingsguard surrendered, while another, his cousin Aemon the Dragon Knight, was captured. 3 other Kingsguard knights were slain, as was Daeron himself. Though his reign had only lasted 4 years, it had been a bloody one. It is said that 10,000 men died conquering Dorne, and another 40 or 50,000 died trying to keep it. Only 18 years old at the time of his death, he had never been married and left no issue. He was succeeded by his younger brother, Baelor the First Targaryen. Though in King's Landing, Prince Viserys argued for the execution of the Dornish hostages, the new King Baelor decided to set them free instead. He walked barefoot from King's Landing to Sunspear, escorting the hostages home, and met with the Prince of Dorne. There, they forged a peace, and Baelor agreed to marry his cousin Prince Daeron to the eldest child of the Prince of Dorne, Princess Myra Martell. During his journey back home, Baelor passed by and freed his cousin Aemon, though he was bitten by venomous snakes in the process. When he finally returned to King's Landing, Baelor convinced the High Septon to dissolve his marriage to his sister Dana, whom he had wed in 160 AC, as it had never been consummated. He then locked Dana and her sisters Rhaena and Elena in the Maiden Vault to preserve their innocence. Baelor was focused mostly on the faith of the Seven and even took a Septon's vows, ensuring he would never father heirs. Baelor began the construction of a new sept, though it would not be completed until after his death. Baelor also began to fast more frequently and for longer periods of time towards the end of his reign, and when his sister and former wife, Dana, who had escaped the Maiden Vault, gave birth to a bastard son she named Daemon Waters, Baelor began a 40-day fast. Baelor was found collapsed on the 41st day and died soon after, in 171 AC. As the next male in line, Prince Viserys, who had served as hand of the king for Aegon III, Daeron I, and Baelor, ascended the throne after Baelor's sisters were passed over. Though he only ruled for a year, Viserys II Targaryen made several reforms in the royal household. He established a new royal mint, attempted to increase trade across the narrow sea, and he revised the code of laws established by Jaehaerys I years before. Next in Targaryen history, we have the Blackfyre Pretenders. Viserys II was succeeded by his eldest son Aegon, who was rumored to have a hand in his father's death. Aegon's reign was filled with corruption, and he gave and took from noble houses as he wished, whenever he wanted to. He had been married to his sister Nerys in 153 AC. They differed greatly in personalities, and childbirth was hard on her. When their son Daeron was born, the Grand Maester warned that another childbirth could kill Nerys. However, Aegon took no heed and impregnated her 3 more times. Only one child, however, survived, Princess Daenerys, born in 172 AC. Nerys died in childbirth a few years later. Aegon was very promiscuous, both before and during his reign. He had bastard children by several women, though he only acknowledged these fathered upon his 9 official mistresses, with one exception, his cousin Dana's son, Daemon Waters. In 182 AC, Aegon openly recognized the boy as his own son and gifted him the Valyrian steel sword Blackfire. There were some who felt that the sword symbolized the monarchy, as the sword had been passed on from king to king since Aegon the Conqueror. Aegon's public gift of the sword to his bastard son was one of the seeds from which the first Blackfire pretenders and the Blackfire rebellion would eventually grow from. Following the acquisition of the sword, Daemon took the surname Blackfire for himself. Aegon's relationship with his trueborn heir was more troublesome. Once he was old enough to voice his own opinions, Prince Daeron and Aegon quarreled more often, and towards the end of Aegon's reign, Daeron became his chief obstacle. When Aegon attempted to invade Dorne with wooden dragons and a fleet in 174 AC, the homeland of Daeron's wife, Myra Martell, rumors were heard for the first time that Daeron had been fathered by Aegon's brother Aemon instead of Aegon. Though Aemon defeated Sir Morgul Hastwyck in a trial by combat when he accused Nerys of adultery, the rumors remained, and it was believed that they had originated with King Aegon himself, though he denied it. Following the death of both Aemon and Nerys, Aegon began more openly to refer to Daeron's illegitimacy, though he never disowned him. Finally, on his deathbed in 184, Aegon legitimized all of his bastards. Though his successor, his son Daeron II, could not undo this, he made attempts to keep his half-siblings close. Daeron began his reign by negotiating with his brother-in-law, Meryn Martell, who had inherited the rule of Dorne. He arranged a marriage between Meryn and his sister Daenerys, which occurred in 187. Following the wedding, Dorne officially had joined the realm, and swore fealty to the Iron Throne. However, while the 7 kingdoms were now finally united, dissatisfaction grew with the concessions that Dorne had won, as well as the growing Dornish influence at court. Daeron II's heir, Prince Baelor, favored his Dornish mother in his physical appearance. These lords looked at Daemon Blackfire and saw in him a warrior who was tall and powerful, with the hallmarks of old Valyria: deep purple eyes, silver gold hair down to his shoulders, and they said he was described as having an almost inhumane beauty, being half a god among mortal men. Though it took many years, talk eventually turned into treason when Daemon planned to make his claim for the Iron Throne. The first Blackfire Rebellion began in early 196 and lasted a year, ending late in the year with the Battle of the Redgrass Field. Daemon and his 2 eldest sons, Aegon and Aemon Blackfire, were both killed, whereas Aegar Rivers, another one of Daeron II's half-brothers, fled into exile with Daemon's remaining children and the sword Blackfire. For a while, Aegar resisted in Tyrosh with Daemon's family, until he formed the Golden Company in 212. Next, we have the Great Spring Sickness. The remainder of Daeron II's reign was peaceful. However, in its final year, 209, problems began when Daeron's heir and Hand of the King, Prince Baelor, died when defending a hedge knight, Sir Duncan the Tall, in a trial of 7 at the tourney at Ashford Meadow. It is believed that Baelor's youngest brother, Maekar, who had fought on the side of the 2 accusers, his own eldest sons, Daeron and Aerion, had been the one to fatally hurt Baelor. Following Baelor's cremation, Maekar sent Aerion into exile, while he allowed his youngest son, Egg, to squire for Duncan, so he could be taught humility and honor. Not long after the death of Baelor, the Great Spring Sickness began. Thousands died as a result, and among the victims were Daeron II and his 2 most immediate heirs, Valar and Matares. As such, Daeron II was succeeded by his second son, Aerys I, in 209, whose reign began with a 2-year drought. The spring sickness had hit the cities of the Seven Kingdoms most, especially King's Landing, and most of the hostages that King Daeron II had once taken after the Blackfire Rebellion had died, leaving their relatives feeling secure enough about attempting a new rebellion. Lord Gormon Peake convinced Daemon II Blackfire to cross the narrow sea to claim the throne. However, the second Blackfire Rebellion was far less successful than the first, as Daemon II was arrested at White Walls before he could even gather an army. He was kept alive as a hostage at King's Landing, but died within years, allowing Aegar Rivers to crown Haegon Blackfire, the new Blackfire pretender. Haegon attempted his invasion in 219, when he crossed the narrow sea with the Golden Company, led by Aegar Rivers. Haegon was slain after he had surrendered his sword, while Aegar was arrested and sentenced to join the Night's Watch. He managed to escape and return to Tyrosh, where he crowned Haegon's son Daemon III Blackfire. In addition to the two Blackfire rebellions, Aerys' reign knew multiple other troubles, including the plague and drought, dwindling trade, rising bandits, and the reaving of Dagon Greyjoy. Additionally, Aerys had difficulty with his heirs. Though he had been married to Lady Aelinor Penrose before his reign began, his marriage remained unconsummated. He additionally refused to take another wife. As he had no issue of his own, he firstly acknowledged his younger brother Rhaegal as his heir. Following Rhaegal's death in 215, Rhaegal's son Aelar was named the Prince of Dragonstone, and the Maekar was named heir when he died. Maekar succeeded Aerys I in 221 and reigned for 12 years. However, when Maekar himself died while leading an attack on the Star Pike in the Peak uprising in 233 AC, the succession once more was challenged. The reign of Aegon V began very troubled. He felt forced to arrest Brynden Rivers, who had served both Maekar and Aerys as hand, after Brynden, who had offered safe passage to Aenys Blackfire from Tyrosh to King's Landing, betrayed Aenys by arresting and executed him upon arrival. Rivers was sent to the Wall and joined the Night's Watch. Aegon V's brother Aemon accompanied Rivers, intent on joining the Night's Watch, as well, so his claim to the Iron Throne could not be used against the king. Towards the end of his reign, Aegon V began to dream of dragons with whom he could bend the lords of Westeros to his will. As several Targaryen kings had tried before him, he seems to have attempted to have hatched dragon eggs at Summerhall, where he had gathered those closest to him to celebrate the upcoming birth of his grandchild in 259. However, in a great tragedy, causing the death of Aegon V, Prince Duncan, and many more, the survivors would not speak of what had happened, and the histories of Archmaester Gildan note that the last maester to serve at the castle spoke of 7 eggs and pyromancers. As Summerhall was burning down, Princess Rhaella Targaryen, the only daughter of Prince Jaehaerys, gave birth to a healthy son named Rhaegar. Finally, we have the War of the Ninepenny Kings. Aegon V's second son Jaehaerys II ascended the throne in 259, following the tragedy of Summerhall, and was immediately faced with a threat from the east when the Band of Nine conquered first Tyrosh and then the Stepstones. The Band of Nine had formed in the disputed lands in 258 from 9 outlaws, exiles, pirates, and sellsword captains. They swore to aid one another in conquering a kingdom for each member. One of these members was Meleys the First Blackfire, known as the Monstrous, who held command over the Golden Company. To face the Ninepenny Kings, as Prince Duncan Targaryen had named them before his death, King Jaehaerys II sent an army, which landed on the shores of the Stepstones in 260. For most of the year, the war continued, but ended when a young knight named Barristan Selmy killed Meleys, therefore ending the male line of the Blackfires after 5 generations, as the remainders of the Band of Nine had little interest in Westeros. This victory ended the war. In total, Jaehaerys II only reigned for 3 years and died after a short sickbed in 262 AC. He was succeeded by his only son, Aerys II Targaryen, who we know as the Mad King, and everything from there is shown in Game of Thrones. Hope you enjoyed this video on House Targaryen.